Well, it's in your deed, you guys have to work this out, but if you don't.
Here's a triangle. It is in a Welch pizza. Here's a flower petal. Not shaped, but still in a triangle. Like that, you can see it a little better. The legs on which this poster stands on are shaped with triangles, and in between them are triangles. On this Montpelier poster, there are triangles for the flowers on them. The triangles, if you look closely. On the button for the elevator, there's somewhat of a triangle shape, and go up. There's another one. Not exact, but pretty darn close. A lamp. If you look on the edges, there are triangles. Again, on the picture of a fire, if you look closely, under the top, triangle, and right there, there's a triangle. A child's hood in the shape of a triangle. A triangle on the sidewalk. On this piece of statue, there are so many triangles. Too many to count. On the side of the building on a roof, another triangle. Which is right in front of the sweet house. On the top of the building, right on the roof, about 5 triangles. The United States of America flag. Not quite a triangle, but pretty darn close. A sign sideways, a perfect triangle shape, if you count the sidewalk.
To protect future people. You know, we don't have a lot of, it's not a huge problem, it's just where we have, we're dealing with, we got some, big problems left that are, can be developed, but some of the other stuff is the garbage property, the marginal slopey junk pieces of property that someone wants to put a driveway in and do, 3 houses off the end of this
I see
driveway.
tax appeals coming now.
And it's just bad, most of them are bad development. It's not like in a rural area where, to share a driveway, it makes a lot of, makes sense.
You have more?
No. So you've already ruled out that you're not creating additional landlocked situations.
That's what we're doing. We're saying, let's not create more problems than what we've already had. We'll deal with the ones we have.
And
but
you're
let's
not
create
concerned
more.
about it from an access management standpoint?
Yeah, it's not, unless it's a limited,
Low
it's,
speed limits.
low speed, residential street or something, and an extra driveway's not gonna make a lot of difference.
Thank you.
Okay. Was there a second to George's motion? I didn't catch that.
I'll second it.
Tom? Okay. All right. So now we have it in play to adopt the plan. Approve the plan.
Confirm the plan.
Confirm the planning process.
Approve the
Don't
plan,
approve it.
confirm the planning process.
We do all of that, all in one fell swoop. So are we ready for the question?
I want to know why you don't have to read that long resolution.
Because it's not in front of me?
That I used to have to read. You got
Yes.
smart.
We got smart.
You say no to your
The motion is to
constituents, but
adopt
you
the
couldn't say no to the fellow commissioners.
Yeah, right. I thought you had to do it. All right.
I'm happy to read it if it would please you, Tom. Okay. Okay. So let's put it to a vote then. All in favor of me not reading that? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, it's carried. Very good. Thank you, and an excellent job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay. Now, our featured event, number 5, discussion of telecommunication and broadband issues and the regional plan. And you all did receive in your packet the current plan's language related to these topics. And I think we're all pretty well aware of how emerging technologies need to be periodically visited and addressed to make sure that we're operating an inclusive plan and one that addresses various issues that come up related to those technologies. I'm no expert in this area, so I'm going to quickly turn it over to Susan, who I don't think claims to be an expert either, but probably knows at least how to get this thing moving along here so we have a good discussion about it.
Well, yes, no, I don't know a lot about this issue, but we do need to address it in the regional plan, and from what I told, it's not mentioned at all. What's the word then that's not
Broadband?
mentioned?
No, broadband as well as the internet and Wi-Fi.
Is not really even mentioned in the plan, so we really need to have a discussion about how and how we need to further address it in the regional plan. Do we need to bring in some speakers to get educated, or
Of course, you recall we spent quite a bit of time on cellular towers prior to the right. We had some sections in there talking about how towns can plan for that type of
Didn't Chris
event.
work with League of Cities and Towns and Economic Development on the new model telecom bylaw that addresses small-scale telecom for the wireless broadband?
For the repeater towers and things, smaller.
yeah.
Yeah, there
that's-
was-
but that was,
Specifically
that
for
was,
broad-
that
wireless
was,
broadband versus cell service.
I don't know that. I thought it was for cell service.
I thought it was just for self-service too,
So did I.
but I'm not positive.
And I
It's
was,
neither one of them
and
are
I'm
in
thinking
the
it
room.
almost is the
Right,
same thing,
yeah.
but it isn't, I'm sure.
They do call them repeaters, but there's a new model telecom bylaw that League of Cities and Towns, and I was thinking it was
Yes.
a regional committee that
Yes,
worked on it.
yeah,
And it
worked on that.
It basically added a small-scale telecom facility, which is the level of facility that these little wireless broadband, like what Plainfield is building right now.
What is broadband? I mean, I hate to sound really stupid, but.
Oh, there's a definition that talks
No.
about megabits and stuff that run up a line up and downstream, and I don't understand any of that.
It's high-speed
Broadband
internet,
is
High-speed internet.
High-speed internet.
Yeah,
high
yeah,
speed,
but-
lots
So
of
what's the
information
difference
flowing at
between
once.
broadband and Wi-Fi then?
Well, Wi-Fi is a wireless broadband.
Wireless
Right, yeah.
broadband.
It's basically a high-speed
Right.
internet without wires.
So the.
But Wi-Fi is when that is in a commercial spot, like
Right.
what Capitol Grounds has in Montpelier, that's
Right.
called a Wi-Fi hotspot.
Yeah, and the State House is a hot spot. In fact, almost the whole city of Montpelier now, downtown, is a hot spot.
Broadband,
It's not Wi-Fi.
What they are gonna have is a wireless system. Now, maybe the Positive Pi will be a Wi-Fi hotspot. Maybe
Right,
they
right,
will
right,
open
but
up-
by definition, it's not a Wi-Fi, right? What Plainfield, actually Plainfield Marshville.
It's a wireless telecom,
Right.
it is wireless?
yeah.
But when you mention speakers, that would be an interesting thing to hear about the Marshfield, Plainfield, or Plainfield, Marshfield.
Project?
Callis too. I think
Callis,
East
too.
Montpelier too is kind of.
It would be interesting to hear, because that's my understanding, that project is, next year and a half or so, all of, right, that's what, all of Marshfield and Plainfield, everywhere,
But
will have
how can,
connections.
it's not gonna be town-wide.
Yes,
Because-
Hopefully, the goal is, the
Well,
reason the
you
because-
have mountains and valleys and everything else, how can it be?
it's small scale, it goes on poles that are gonna be on the regular, using the existing telephone pole system, electrical poles and
They
stuff.
do their main facility, which actually I think comes off a Verizon line, a regular wired broadband. And then they shoot that that has an area of coverage, and then where it can't reach, they'll put a repeater, and the repeater will pick it up and shoot it around another area, so you get these increasing bands, so that eventually they hope to have the whole town covered. And that's why the towns have supported with some of these grants, getting this service out there with, like, basically rallying together customers, because until they get customers, it's not financially feasible, so the towns have been helping them get customers and identify customers.
So is that, what's the difference between that and DSL?
DSL's going through,
The phone.
through the phone system, but it's not like a dial-up. It's a, it's a dedicated service line, I think that's actually what it stands
But
for.
Verizon says they'll sell you.
The speed difference between a dial-up and a DSL is
yeah,
like
no,
way big.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
know, we just made that change, but what about between DSL,
And wireless?
and wireless?
It depends
Broadband?
upon how many people are using the repeaters. If you have a band, a telephone line going out and you have repeaters going out, and one person gets on that, you have incredible high speed, and then as each person gets on it, you slowly
Which-
use
Yeah,
something.
well, I know.
Which is true with cable modems too.
Yeah.
But
Right.
not true with DSL.
Right,
No.
because that's your own dedicated line.
DSL is the best, but realistically, it's not gonna get to the small, to the rural areas.
It's limited, it's
Right.
It
Um,
has to be so,
Well-
certain distance from the.
Yeah.
from
What do
the-
you have in Roxbury, Tom? You keep alluding to,
We have DSL, but we
you have DSL in
Yeah,
Roxbury?
Yeah, because
have in Marshfield,
TDS Telecom has a switching station right close,
Right down
you
the
know, within
track.
100
Oh.
yards of my house, so.
Right, that's the thing, you have to be
We're
near
at
city,
the-
it's like I have it in Marshall.
We're
Like
at the
Waitsfield
max.
Valley Telecom, anybody that's on those telephone systems have it as well.
Yeah, you can get,
But
but if you're far,
Verizon
you know,
doesn't.
depending on how far you are from the switching
Yeah.
station, you may not be
Right.
able
It's
to
like
get
a
the
half mile.
top speed, but.
Well, the switching station.
But I just didn't know what broadband,
Yeah,
I thought it was faster, but I guess it's not faster.
what's
Well,
not faster?
It is
Broadband
faster.
It's not, it's faster than dial-up, but it's not faster than DSL.
You mean
Well,
broadband? Broadband.
DSL is a
Well,
kind of broadband.
Yeah, right, but I mean, wireless.
Wireless.
It can be just as
It
fast,
can be just as fast.
It can.
but it can get loaded up.
Right.
So if you're 6 repeaters out,
With 60,000 people in between you and the base station, yeah, it would slow down. It would take a lot. It depends on how big the broadband is, how big the band is,
Yeah.
Right.
which indicates how much information can flow at one time.
yeah.
I mean, pipeline.
And you can also make DSL like wireless by putting a router in your house, and then you can access your DSL line with wireless.
Makes your house a hotspot.
It's kind of the
Yeah,
same
create your own,
concept,
yeah.
right? I mean, it's still, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have that, we have that at home. We have that at home, we go upstairs, downstairs.
but the reality is that the really rural areas are not gonna get DSL wired, high-speed internet in the near future, probably even the distant future.
Well, that's,
It's just so expensive.
So we-
isn't that because you can only go so far from the dial-up?
That's right.
That's the
Well,
problem.
it's not a financial model for Verizon to do it. There's not
No.
enough
Exactly.
customers per mile to support the cost of putting the wires in.
Yeah, we're with Fairpoint New England, and we don't know why they did it, but they did it for us.
But,
They had to put in new lines.
I mean, I don't know about in Roxbury, but, you know, it's just a regular phone line.
But it's not just a regular phone line. You have to use certain distance from the switching station.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
And TDS is fiber optic all
Fiber
the way
optic,
down
that's-
that railroad track from Northfield going towards Roxbury and from Northfield to Montpelier.
We're not
No,
into
no.
that. There is a fiber optic line
Right.
running along there, but.
But
is that not
no,
part of the
see,
DSL service?
you are right,
No,
it
that's
is a
not part of it.
regular phone line, but to use the phone line to tie into the fiber optics, you're limited by how far away the connection is. Once you get past that, you can't, the phone line drops the signal and you lose the effectiveness of it.
Well, so far
But
from
you
the
just
dial-up.
happen to be next to a station
Yeah.
where your phone line is close enough to plug into the fiber optics.
And one of the disadvantages is if a town like Callis has the original telecom model, which was for cell towers, and we basically, frankly, discourage them. It lumps these new small-scale wireless broadband facilities into that, and they have to jump through lots of hurdles and incur lots of costs getting permits for what really are not very high-magnitude facilities. So you wanna get this new model in that allows for this small scale, with
Yeah.
not a lot of
Hmm.
permitting requirements.
Rhonda was asking about that when you were out of the room, about,
The new
the
league
new
model?
new
Yes, it
model.
definitely, it has an expedited process for small-scale facilities.
And what's the definition of small scale?
I'd have to look it up, Stan, I don't.
When you say small scale, you don't mean small, I mean, you mean small scale in the size of
Right.
the antenna.
It's a
Right,
height,
right.
height in the building that it's
Yes,
mounted
physically,
on.
physically
It's a
smaller.
Physical description of the
Right.
facility.
Okay.
Small,
Yeah.
but they're just like little.
I meant,
20 feet, I think it's 20
Yeah.
feet off a building.
right, yeah.
Right,
phys-
but
physically
no, I mean,
smaller
the
scale.
antennas that they're talking about putting on the telephone poles, they're only like about 2
Yeah.
feet tall or so.
Right.
So, that's
Yeah,
not.
and I think the model talks about extending, I forget the certain number of feet above an existing structure. It's, I don't know, there's 20 feet or 12 feet or something, but something like that would definitely fall
Easier
under
to fall under.
the expedited permit process.
Right, right.
But our plan makes no distinction.
I guess it doesn't. It does,
No.
it references the model.
Right.
Right,
But it's
and
the old model.
It's the old model.
The last paragraph on the front narrative section has questions. Communities investigating the regulation of wireless facilities have to ask themselves many questions as they proceed. Would they rather have small scale, less visible, or larger, blah, blah, and so those are perhaps some of the things we need to consider. Or have answers to.
George, do you have suggestions on things we might think about or talk policies we might want to add in the regional plan, or at least have a discussion about?
I think some specific statements, and I missed a copy of what we do have in the plan, but I
It's in
didn't
your
recall
packet.
any.
It's on the back.
Last page.
I didn't recall anything that specifically said, identified why and how access to broadband is advantageous. We were just awfully early in this whole game. And I think, we talk about why it's important to preserve wetlands, why it's important to have housing, why it's important to, and I think some discussion of why it's important to have broadband, would certainly be useful. And then just discussing some of the different ways that you can get it, some of the different vehicles that are out there, probably with a caveat saying there'll be 8 more by the time you read this, but I think the things that are being done are terrific, and it would be interesting to hear more about some of them. It would certainly, I think, be worthwhile noting some of those in the plan and encouraging people to talk to those who've been through it.
I would think we tie it back to economic development somehow.
Right. Yeah, I think we have
Saying,
to.
make it an economic development goal that we have access to high-speed internet universally in the region.
And then the distinction between various, looking at what's in our plan that may inadvertently address things that it doesn't need to, or that we don't want it to address, the very small repeaters, et cetera. If our communications says, look out for these and watch this, making some distinctions between those as they now unfold.
There's some neat things, like even a town, when they're putting a water tower up as part of a water project, should think about, hey, could we stick a 20-foot antenna on top of the water tower and get quick access to high-speed internet?
And get paid.
Or even
We
the
got
fact.
antennas on the side of the
It-
auditorium.
It's a
We got
revenue.
That's a good revenue source.
Right, and a church steeple, same deal.
Church steeple,
Yeah.
flagpole and the.
Silos? Nelson, you have something?
Silos.
Yeah, I have a question. How does fiber optics play into this? I saw, I don't know if anybody knows, I mean, that's one of the, I would like to be a little better informed. I know that a fiber optic cable was put in on Route 12. I think it went down as far as, at least as far as Riverton towards Roxbury, towards Montpelier. I don't know what it was, the intention was, and how that plays into this telecommunication systems, and I know that there's a drive to put into all public right-of-ways an effort to get fiber optics in, and and I don't know enough about it, but I think it plays a pretty important role. Does anyone else know?
Do you know who did it?
I don't know who did it.
Do you need- For T1 line, do you need fiber optics?
No.
I don't think so.
And you were, not before. And you were saying that there's one on the rail line too, right?
TDS laid it out maybe in 1990
Right.
from Northfield in both directions. I don't know how far they went. I thought they went all the way to Montpelier because they had a station in Montpelier.
Well, it comes, that line that you're talking about comes all the way from Massachusetts, as far as I know. They plowed it through the whole length.
Right through the rail bed?
Yeah, right through the rail bed. They had a huge plow on the train, they just pulled it through.
Yeah.
And, you know, fiber optics is the link just behind the hardwire. I mean, all this DSL stuff,
They didn't
all
come
these,
yet.
everything is tied
She thinks
at
it
some
may have run
point
out.
into the fiber optics, and the fiber optics carry it, you know, because it carries so much more. I think Verizon put a line all the way up, well, up Worcester, up to Worcester, up Route 12, overhead. So I knew a guy who worked on it, so it's spread out everywhere, but that's like the Mississippi, you know, and then all the rest of our phone lines and everything are the tributaries off of it.
Right.
It just
And
carries so
that's why
much
TDS
data.
stock went through the roof
Well,
in
good.
2000.
Yeah, good to know.
But
Because they
the
control the
region,
Mississippi River telecommunications.
the region is limited unless that fiber optic system is spread out throughout the region, then, you know, like you're saying, you have to go wireless in order to, you know, but still, that all has to come back to some point. Well, I guess it wouldn't have to come back to the fiber optic cable if the wireless went from tower to tower to tower and, you know.
But at some point,
But
that tower
wireless starts.
drops
gotta
down to
start
that
at
fiber optic.
cable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So I think going back to this economic development, I think that this piece that talks about telecommunication has to encompass fiber optics, because I think because I think that you can't have a wireless system without the appropriate hardwire or fiber.
We should
or-
get
It's called the first mile.
We should
First
get a
one, yeah.
Verizon representative or somebody, and I'm not calling out Verizon, but somebody, you know, from the industry come and talk to us about.
Charlie Kramer
We're all a
is a
bunch
new
of-
guy over at Economic Development who just does telecom, wireless. Mostly wireless.
Now, the last time we did this, we did have someone from the Department of Public Service
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
come and talk to us.
Because they talked about that.
About all this
that
stuff.
economic development forum that we went to. Stan and I went
No, it's
to.
big in Lamoille County.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
have, Department of Commerce has a person that's dedicated now, that's his specialty.
Yep. Karen?
Kramer, Charlie Kramer.
Right, that,
Kramer.
Right, that's the name that was given to me. He'd be a good one.
He's supposed to be
have.
the guru of knowing all this stuff, according to the person who's speaking.
Yeah. What was her name?
Karen Lynch.
Karen Lynch. Right.
Well, maybe we could schedule a meeting with.
That might be someone that we should invite, because I think, yeah.
Lamoille County.
Yeah.
So, but that might be someone, because I think it's really important to tie something like this in to either, well, it's the economic development because of our the distribution patterns and housing patterns that's going on. One of the big things that was talking about at that conference was how many people are small businesses and how many small businesses turn into bigger businesses. And that we're talking about economic development and how it's important to have housing that allows home occupations, because so many of the home occupations turned into large, bigger businesses. Like a company that just moved to California,
Annie's?
Annie's, that started in a garage, the
Yep.
economic development people helped them get going. And, you know, here's a great big company, you know, everybody knows the Ben and Jerry story and all of this, you know, but, you know, it's definitely an economic force that hasn't been paid a lot of attention to. And it may be necessary for towns and states, the state, to get involved in laying the major fiber optic highways, you know. We did that back when we decided transportation wasn't appropriate, and we had to expand the highway system and build the infrastructure for economic development. Well, this is another area that is required for economic development. Maybe the states and the towns have to step in and come up with some sort of contribution to
Well,
ensure that this happens.
It's also a transportation issue.
Well,
Right.
You can work at home, you're not driving on the road.
That's true,
Exactly.
absolutely.
You know, so, you know,
Yeah.
one of
The
the.
transportation bill that was just passed in Congress had an earmark, and I can't remember if Leahy or Jeffords got it, that's gonna lay fiber optic, it's gonna pay for fiber optic up and down the interstate, 89 and 91.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And the state is really hoping that off that trunk line, wireless providers can be served to shoot it out to the small rural towns. But that's gonna be a huge step forward, at least for towns that are in the interstate.
Well, that's fine, right along the interstate, but, you know, look at our state, so much of it, you know, you have that little band T section there that's covered, but so much is still rural. I have fiber optics that comes right by my front door, 30 feet from the house, and I can't get DSL because the station is 3 miles away,
Yeah.
and it's not worthwhile to run a major line out, because there's 10 houses there, so we'll never see it. It's never gonna hit Verizon's economic model to put it in, you know, so either we have to band together, and then a system
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
is so expensive for
Yeah.
10 folks, because we've already started to check into it. You know, there's gonna have to be some sort of help there.
But that's where the wireless, that's what the Plainfield, Marshfield, Callis.
He's
Right.
familiar.
But a tower,
Plan is.
tower 5 miles away that could do your 10 and then a number of other
Down
10s.
right into
Dollars
Waterbury
and
and
cents, though. I
everything.
mean, you got 10 houses on the road,
But
it's
the-
it's probably not gonna be economically viable
No.
to put the repeaters in to hit those 10 houses, I mean, unless they all.
We're
talking
10
about
houses,
getting
but
all
you're
through-
talking about going 6 miles
Yeah.
with, you know, on every telephone pole, every 200 feet for 10 houses.
But it's not necessarily every telephone. I mean,
No,
it-
no, it's the high point.
Yeah,
They take
well,
GPS and then
I
there's
know,
line of
just
sight.
line of
boundary
sight.
trees.
Well,
Stan, there's
drive
no- you
drive
just
from
have to-
Waterbury
you just have
to
to move, Stan.
Mad River, and there's no, the telephone poles are barely in line of sight.
The
You
other
know.
thing on your language is FCC doesn't regulate wireless at all.
Right.
And so one of the economic problems is if a wireless provider, for instance, comes to Callis, Marshfield, Plainfield, goes to all this effort, gets the loans, gets the financing, builds this system, and then Verizon says, a lot of customers out there, I guess we will lay lines. And you can have 2 providers in the same, there's no sole source areas, so in can come the big company and take all the customers away.
Right.
And plus, there's no FCC, so that's something that could happen down the road, is FCC could start issuing licenses.
Well, isn't that already a concern on Verizon, I mean, on the,
The independent Wi-Fi.
no, yeah, I mean, to have towns providing this, I mean, like New Orleans now is completely, wireless, and so all the.
No, we live in there, but it's wireless.
No, I mean, I don't mean because the
In
wires
what
are
sense are they
down.
wireless, Tom?
Huh?
In what sense are they wireless?
Well,
Yeah, right.
in many senses, but, you know, no, but that, no, that was one of the, something that I just heard on, that they have gone to this wireless broadband system citywide, and all the normal providers are having a fit, because, you know, there goes all their income. And I heard the same comments about what's happening in Marshfield, Plainfield, but if they're not there anyway, I mean, it's pretty hard for them to bite.
Can you create franchises? I mean, the cable company, this, you know, some of the urban areas, not in Vermont urban, but real urban.
Real.
They have franchises in some cities. I mean, your cable, well, there's only one cable
Well,
company.
Burlington does that.
Burlington, yeah.
Well, that's controversial right now. The city of Burlington is gonna be providing broadband service,
Right, well, that's what I'm talking
And
about, yeah.
controversial.
But how
Some
do you-
states, towns do issue franchises. And, New Hampshire was thinking about it, there was a project that was gonna be down in Hanover, and they've backed out and said it's too hard to get a franchise, and the company actually said they're coming to Vermont because they think it's easier to get franchises up here, but I don't know.
Well, you also kind of have a similar problem when you had the big towers. and forcing people to co-locate on an existing tower. Another tower guy comes in and says, I'm gonna build my tower over here. You know, and trying to do ordinances to force them to co-locate as opposed to doing, can you do the same thing on a small scale, you know, small antennas? We got the antennas, you know, it's kinda like first come gets in there, they own it, you know. I mean, if Verizon wants to buy out that other company's antennas, fine, that's the
What they
marketplace.
would do is then decide there's enough customers and they'd lay the fiber.
Yeah, oh, I see.
Well, they're already laying
But is
fiber.
that, do you think that's likely, I mean, I'm just wondering from an economic standpoint, is that likely once there's a system in place? I mean, is, you know, unless you had huge amount of growth.
I think they're laying fiber optic cable along Route 12 right now. Du Bois is plowing.
But it's more than
along.
that, I mean, it's more than just fiber optics,
Right.
you know.
Well, you know, how do you get a Wi-Fi company to commit if you're on the borderline? You know, if I show that there's a market here, then Verizon lays the hardwire. If I stay out of it and there is no market, then Verizon won't go in it because there's no proof. You know, you're kind of caught.
The state has planning money for towns, and what they basically do is they help you survey your town for, if you don't have it, do you want it, and how much are you willing to pay for it? And so you create this core of interested people that then entices and then you go out and you solicit bids from various companies who come to your town and work with you to provide the service. It's kind of a mutual, I mean, the town doesn't put any money into it other than you get this grant and you survey them. It's just a cooperative relationship that's.
Come and they would build it.
The Council on Rural Development is
Yeah.
working on it.
Isn't a lot of this gonna be, passé, aren't we gonna have satellite? I mean, you know, you got
And then it's
DirecTV coming into a little dish, why couldn't you get your computer information into?
It's 35,000 miles up and back, and they are doing it, but it's still,
It's very
what they say,
expensive.
it's 35,000 miles up and back, so.
It's not good. Our neighbor who was a computer jockey had it before he could get DSL, which he finally got. He said there's there's a time lag. There's a time lag.
Yeah.
Between the sending up and the getting back.
Oh, I know, surfing is a
Yeah.
drag. Takes forever for it to change.
Satellite, you know that?
I guess that's the same thing.
You hear the time delay on when the newscasters talk to the other people.
That's the same deal, right?
That's if it's
Yeah.
going satellite,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
time delay.
yeah, yeah.
If you can tell if it's going, because then they, the guy standing there doesn't know, he hasn't heard it yet, he hasn't gone here. That's
3 seconds
like
of
time delay.
But it's changing.
That'll speed up.
It's forever changing. And we all got a good handle on what this is all about now?
No.
I learned a lot, I think.
The state has a statewide telecom plan, which is where I'd suggest you maybe start if you look at that and see whether that gives any guiding.
Actually, we were given that a while back.
I always thought a hotspot was the distance between me and the wood stove where my butt hurt. Now I understand it has a whole new definition.
Yeah.
It's a Wi-Fi.
My dog had hot spots.
My mother had hotspots. No, hot flashes.
All right.
And Wi-Fi I thought was something that was in Hawaii.
Too much information here.
You don't need to know everything.
Well, it seems you're trying to.
We might want to
We should
consider
look into this franchise.
See why I shouldn't.
Oh, really? CVRPC hold a franchise?
To one provider.
Hmm.
You know, you get somebody's sole, sole franchise, they may be interested in
Total coverage.
total coverage, you know. They don't have to worry about competition.
Yeah, well, think about the graph.
I know, we could be doing well here.
You're paid to be a commissioner.
Dream on.
Yeah.
Are you planning to be a walking tower?
No, but, you know, I mean, I thought this back when they were talking about cell phones, is that you should franchise. In fact, I think towns should franchise with fuel dealers and parcel delivery services and all that, because I'm getting sick and tired of having UPS, DHL, and FedEx streaming by my house at 100 miles an hour. You know? I mean, I think we ought to franchise it with one company.
Okay, that was an interesting segue.
The other issue that we're not talking about is what's changing with the cell phone technology. I mean, is that still, my understanding, that is also coming down, you know, getting off the big towers, and I don't know if they're looking at, but I thought some of that was changing.
Yeah.
Or is it, you know?
Has been.
And how, again, you know, just, you know, education, you know, what's going on with that technology.
Okay, well, I don't know if we have major conclusions. I think we all kind of realize that this is a important thing for economic development, for improving prosperity within our communities, quality of life issue.
We need to educate.
And certainly we need to understand it and be informed of the changes and the emerging technologies that are involved. Okay, any other business? If not, then we're adjourned. I wish everybody a wonderful Christmas season, happy holidays, and all that. And keep warm.
Come next month for Kevin Dorn.
And if I could see the Act 250 committee, just a few.
I mean, I think the problem is